What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the cold and opinionated hippie. It's like 18 degrees here in Texas, which is very, very, very rare for us. Plus, my allergies are killing me. A miserable day. But I wanted to talk about this Dark Side of the Moon live at Wembley 1974 Pink Floyd release that came out in 2023. I somehow completely slept on this thing. I haven't really followed Pink Floyd as far as new releases. Lately I did check out that Animals thing, which was pretty awesome. Checked out the Roger Waters remake of Dark Side of the Moon, which was pretty disappointing. And so earlier in 2023 they had a box set which honored the 50th anniversary of Dark Side of the Moon, and part of that box set included a complete live performance of the Dark Side of the Moon from Wembley 1974. I also noticed Pink Floyd dumped a lot of, they did this before a couple years ago. They dumped a lot of, I think, 73 or 74 live shows on streaming services, I think both on Spotify and YouTube Music, probably on Amazon, but complete shows from this era. The sound quality is not as good as this one, but almost all of those complete shows had a complete Dark Side of the Moon on them, and then a first set that was a mix of other stuff. But I wanted to talk about this because this thing is ridiculously fantastic. When I talked about the Roger Waters Dark Side of the Moon, like when he remade it, like to me, that shouldn't have been a release. That should have been like disc 5 of like a 5-disc Roger Waters set. Like, oh, we also have this. Let's throw this on there just to flesh out the box set. This, I almost think, needs to be like the Dark Side of the Moon album needs to be packaged with this from here on out. It needs to be the studio out. It needs to be a 2-disc set. The studio album and this. They need to go together. It's pretty much, you know, that they don't mess around much with their songs live. They stay pretty true, you know, to the structure and the format and everything that the studio versions represent or are. But there's a little more breathing room on this. Specifically, there's about 13 minutes, maybe 12 minutes when you get rid of audience applause, of breathing room that they've added. Breathing room and maybe the segues, though some of the segues are abruptly shorter. More breathing room at the beginning of end of songs, especially in like the Breathe and On the Run early on in the album. We get a couple songs that have sort of jams in the middle, for lack of a better word. Money has this sort of breakdown section where David gets to go off for a little while longer. And then Any Color You Like is just stretched to an awesome 8 minutes. And Wright gets a chance to strut his stuff a little more. And Gilmore gets a chance to show off. You know, that's probably where the bulk of the extra time comes from. Though we do a Great Gig in the Sky get stretched out. There's even this absolutely amazing sort of jazzy interlude towards the end of Great Gig in the Sky. Waters is starting to play in these jazz lines on the bass, and, you know, Wright's messing around on keys and piano. It's just like it doesn't replace the studio album, because the studio album is like, you know, a perfect piece of art. But this, like comparing this to like later versions of like, I think, what is it? I don't listen to much by Pink Floyd. I think it's on Pulse, right? I think that's the release where they do the complete Dark Side of the Moon. This is not that. This is like on that, they're like playing the album. On this, they're playing the songs, and they're not trying to make it sound like the album. And it's just, there's not major differences, but if you know Dark Side of the Moon and you've been listening to it for 50 years and you want to revisit it, but you want a little slightly different flavor, this is absolutely delicious. It's absolutely delicious. Same track list, obviously. They're not messing around. Speak to Me just kind of feels a little bit longer. It's a little bit looser, kind of just sets it up really nicely. Breathe in the Air has a little bit more just feels like it's a little more, a lot of Richard Wright, just adding just more textures and layers and just kind of floatiness in these songs. On the Run doesn't have quite the same hypnotic drive, I think, as the studio version does. And the part when, if you've seen them live, it's when the bed crashes, you know, that part where it's like, when that thing happens, that is played for less dramatic effect. That seems less the point of the song than it does maybe on the studio version. It's just there, and it's just flowing, and the band's just kind of floating in this era, and just kind of riding this awesome little groove. I don't know, it just has a completely different vibe. Maybe a little more chill vibe, but a chill vibe that I think works really well. Time, I think the best part about Time is knowing that Nick Mason is playing that drum part live right there, in the venue. I think it adds a little more something neat about that intro, instead of just this weird, awesome set piece to set up the rest of the song. It just feels like it's just, I don't know, more of a Nick Mason showcase in the best way possible. Once they drop into Time, it feels maybe a little slower, but after a while, the energy and the sort of momentum of the band kind of takes over and everything's fine. I will say this, the one thing that's probably clearly better on the studio album than this live version are the vocals, which is to be expected. Gilmour sounds particularly aggressive in a way I don't think he does on the album. He's singing every song like it's Young Lust. I am just a poor boy. He's got something going on in there, some rage or some anger or way too much energy. That's maybe the only thing that, I would mark it down for, but it's still absolutely awesome. And the music more than, makes up for it. And then Great Gig in the Sky is just beautiful. Richard Wright cannot wait to get into Great Gig in the Sky. Is even before David's finishes last Breathe Reprise lyrics at the end of Time, that piano intro to the Great Gig in the Sky is going, and we're off. No Claire Torrey on here. There's two females, and so as they would do, even in I think the 90s or the 2000s, whenever they were doing Dark Side of the Moon, they have two background singers. In this case, Vanetta Fields and Carlina Williams, who are kind of have a battle royale kind of going at it with Great Gig in the Sky, and both of them getting the chance to just strut their stuff. It's pretty fantastic. That nice little jazz break at the end. Then the money, the keyboard, the sound effects come in, and then Waters drops his bass line in Money, and it is loud and it is dominant and it is in your face. Waters and this entire thing sounds fantastic. As we get later on, Any Color You Like, Brain Damage, Eclipse, the stuff Waters is doing on his bass is just has so much more personality and just seems so much more fluid and live, and even maybe a little jazzier than the studio album. Money is great, has that breakdown where Gilmour gets to show off a little. It's fun, it's pretty awesome. I don't think it's pretty what you would expect when they break it down and Gilmour's just ripping stuff off, but it's got some really good energy in it. Us and Them, just beautiful. A different saxophone solo. He's not trying to simply play the one that's on the album, so that's cool. And then the Brain Damage Eclipse is just the transition into Brain Damage, the transition from Brain Damage into Eclipse, just the little difference in the bass, the little difference in the attack, just slight little things that give, that it's almost like the butterfly effect. One little change in the way we enter Brain Damage just makes the entire song feel different. Then that transition from Brain Damage Eclipse just kind of makes the entire song feel different. Yeah, this is absolutely fantastic. It really is. For being one of those bands, along with Genesis in particular, a lot of prog bands who are known for maybe just trying to replicate their albums note for note live, or replicate their songs note for note when they play them live. This one is, for the most part, the songs are as you know them and you're not going to be surprised by anything, but it just feels like there's just a little more elbow space and it's a little looser and they're just having a good time up there playing them, and it's just, yeah. It's pretty fantastic. So yeah, wanted to recommend that if you haven't checked it out, if somehow you missed it like I missed it, because I've been really enjoying it the past couple of weeks. And I'm now going to delve back in. I don't think I did review the studio albums, but I never reviewed the live albums from Pink Floyd. So I think I'm going to check those out and drop that video and see if any of them can compare to this, because this really is just fantastic. I think they have 5 or 6 that are official released Pink Floyd live albums. I'm not going to review all those dozens of shows they've dropped on streaming media. But now I'm intrigued. Now I'm interested to compare this with that Pulse, Dark Side of the Moon, and any other stuff they've done. But yeah, anyways, that's all I got. I wanted to share that. I wanted to make sure people knew about that release, because I didn't somehow. I somehow missed it, and I'm glad I've now found it, because this is a pretty awesome addition to the universe that is the Dark Side of the Moon. And I do think it should be a 2 CD package, a reduced cost 2 CD package, because they complement each other so well, the studio and the live. And yeah, what doesn't work for the live, you're like, okay, that's why the studio is so great. And what they enhance in the live, you're like, still gives you appreciation for what they managed to like edit down to in the studio. Yeah, that's all I got. Wanted to share that with you. Enjoy it. Peace. Stay warm, people, if you're anywhere in the United States, because we're dealing with I think a countrywide cold front right now. It's pretty miserable. But anyways, that's all I got. Peace. Thanks. Go listen to this album. Talk to you later. Comment, all that stuff. All right. Bye.